So good morning. For those of you that joined the last couple of minutes, my name is Ben Voller. I'm going to be leading this technical presentation on the GoConnect server. We obviously may hear a few bings if people join even later than now, but I think in order to keep people that are getting a bit restless and get into this starting now, we're going to start with the presentation. So as you said, my name is Ben Voller. I've been working for Mondigo for a couple of years now, heading up the technical support team. And I've been asked to do this presentation, and I'll do another one tomorrow for the client side on how to configure the GoConnect software. So this is not a webinar about the functionality that's available per se, but I'm hoping that the aim of this presentation, this webinar, is so that those of you that go onto a client site and install and configure the GoConnect software are familiar with all the options that are available in here for configuration, so that you're comfortable with the software and that you're able to manage any questions that you should get from your customers. So we'll do a presentation, but you'll see that I will actually be spending most of the time using my own instance of the GoConnect server to demonstrate the points that I'm talking about. This is because that's a slightly larger screen, so you can actually see more clearly. But everything I'm talking about is going to be available from a technical presentation that's from the website, from the 2.4 launch website. So all the points that I'm talking about today, there is a PowerPoint presentation, this one in fact that you can see in front of me right now, that's going to be available from the GoConnect 2.4 version launch site. So let me start now. So as I'm sure everyone is aware, at least I'm having everyone aware, GoConnect is a CTI product aimed to integrate with customers' databases on their system to allow click-to-dial and indeed preview and popping of records so that people can tell who they're talking to before calls even come in. The main aim being to increase productivity of the workforce. We can get the most out of their telephone system and indeed the databases that they're running on there for their business. So we're going to go through and talk about this. The installation, now there's a couple of slides on this before we go to the real thing. We're talking about the minimum specifications here. I'm hoping that everyone that looks at this presentation will realise that the minimum specification, even for a medium-sized site, is in essence very easy to get hold of if you went down to the local shops, PC World, whatever, and bought just a standalone PC. Then I'm sure that we more than meet the minimum requirements that we have for our software. Any requirements that we've got here are in fact driven by the minimum requirements from Microsoft for the SQL Server 2008 edition, Express edition, which we'll talk about later on, but that's the main driving force. You can see that we've segmented the size of sites into a small and medium-sized site, medium or stroke multi-site, so multi-site being a connection to more than one Panasonic PBX. So those are the definitions. You see at the side how we define them. You see at the top, sorry, how we define them. But obviously you may come across customers that have a larger site than the medium or multi-site site. In those cases, we would advise that you contact us directly, the support team for GoConnect, so that we can discuss the customer's requirements. Experience shows that they are a large site, but their actual use of the phone systems are minimum, and therefore we don't have to do anything in particular to ensure that GoConnect runs smoothly. Or it might be that the size of their site actually implies that they have some additional requirements of the GoConnect software that we may need to be aware of. We find the larger the site, the more likely they are to have particular requirements that we may need to get involved in order to make sure that everything works as they expect. So please contact us if you have any questions about the size of the site, so we can discuss, allay everyone's fears, and make sure that everything goes smoothly. We don't like to have nasty surprises on the day of the install, which obviously most of the cases the resellers do on our behalf, but we can be involved in should you need us to be. So that's the specification. Here we've got a minimum firmware version sheet. I hope there's nothing too surprising on here. With the KX range of the phone systems, we go back to version 5.0 of the firmware where we support it. This is to do with stability and functionality, so we know that it works on these versions. So we know that if you have that firmware on the PBX, then everything should work as we expect it to. And also with the new NS1000 phone system, we came in at the beginning when that was first introduced to work with version 1 of the firmware, but obviously we keep our own phone systems up to date over here so that we know that it works with latest firmware as well. We do support multiple languages, as you can see at the bottom of this page. We don't necessarily speak all those languages ourselves, but if the customer changes the language of either the GoConnect server or the GoConnect client to one that suits them, then we're hoping that all the English settings, wording, changes to that appropriate language. We have had professional translators do that work for us. And also in the middle here, you can see that there's latest version of the software. It's always available from the GoConnect CRM website from the downloads page. So that's always kept up to date with the most recent version. We would advise that if you go onto a site, especially if you haven't installed GoConnect for a while, that you just quickly go to that, before you go to the customer, quickly go to this website to make sure that the version you were expecting to install is in fact the latest version, so that we don't have older versions which may indeed not have any functionality that the customer is expecting, or potentially, if it's really an old version that you happen to have on a memory stick or saved on your system already, then there may have been some improvements or some bugs that we have ironed out. Okay, so that's this slide. We're going to go to the presentation, in the installation, sorry. You'll find, those of you that haven't already installed GoConnect, that it's a really simple process. There's nothing much to talk about on the actual install process. A simple double click of the executable that you can download from the website. Click on yes, you want to install, and then quite simply click on finish. It's that simple, nothing more complicated than that. All the configuration which goes through can be done through our wizard, which we'll talk about later, but I'm hoping that when you see that as well, you will understand that we try to keep the initial configuration as simple as possible. We would obviously say that before you start, you make sure that you've got a PC, a server to install the software on that meets our minimum requirements. As I've just explained, that you have the latest version of the GoConnect software ready to install. From a technical point of view, bit that we can't help you with is you would need to know the IP address of the phone system that you're connecting to. And also, if you're upgrading from an earlier version of GoConnect, so maybe version 2.3 to 2.4, that you've purchased the relevant software assurance licenses so that that customer's site continues to work and we don't have any licensing issues. So that's nice and simple, hopefully. Okay, so part of the installation here, not a very interesting slide. We would say that, as I explained earlier on, that we do use, that many of our driving force for the minimum specification is SQL Server 2008 R2 Express Edition. This gets installed, if relevant, along with the GoConnect server configuration software. Obviously, if the machine you're installing it on has already got SQL Server 2008 R2 installed in it, then we don't install it again. We can't install it again, but we will create our own instance in there. So don't be surprised after install if you do see the SQL Server on that site. We also create one or two GoConnect services on the server, which are used to control the configuration and the connection to the phone system. So you'll see a GoConnect server service, and indeed one or two GoConnect telephony services, depending on how many phone systems you are connecting to. Now we're going to talk about quickly the ports that we use for connectivity purposes. As a rule, the main ports we use are TCP ports 21050. That's the one that all the clients use to connect. So that's the PC client, the Mac client, or indeed our mobile client, whether it's the Android or the iPhone version. When using the mobile client to enable the TLS secured connection, by default we will try and use port 21051. If that port's not available to use, then we'll go back to using port 21050. We don't normally come across this being an issue. It could be that certain sites have a firewall or a router in place or something similar which may need to be configured to allow that connectivity, or it could be that you want to use some network address translations or port forwarding to enable the clients to point to the right server that's had the GoConnect software installed on it. Obviously, we can't get involved in actually changing a user's site configuration for the network, but we can advise the relevant people on what needs to be in place at the time should you experience any problems. So now, as I explained, there is an installation wizard that you can go through after installing the software. Now, these screens aren't very big. I'll quickly talk through them, and then I'll open up my version of GoConnect and show you the screens in real life, and I'll very, very quickly configure my machine to connect to a demonstration PBX. So when you first install GoConnect server, you'll come up with this splash screen, which has two options on it, the installation wizard and the classic menu. As I explained, we're going to go to the installation wizard first. These are the minimum steps that you need to configure the GoConnect server. But we've also got the classic menu, which means that at any point in time after you've installed our product, you can go back to the software and pick and choose which configuration options you want to change, and indeed made some additional changes that won't normally take part of the installation wizard. Should anyone from the GoConnect support team ask you specifically what version of the GoConnect server you're running on the customer's site, then this is the screen to look at. When you first fire it up, you should be able to see here, maybe the screenshot's a little bit small, but down towards the bottom right-hand side of this screen, just above the language drop-down menu, it does indeed say here version 2.4.2. Now that's actually slightly out of date, but these are just slides, they're not the real thing. So that's the version we're using on this, in this example, is version 2.4.2. That's quite important to us. If we feel the need to ask that question, then we would need to know the exact example, the exact answer, not just the latest version. Especially if we're doing a handover between the 2.3 and the 2.4, latest version is a bit of a grey area as to which version we'd actually be looking at. So if you go through the classic, through the installation wizard, the first screen you get is the licensing screen. So on this screen, we would ask you to input the customer's details. This is not the reseller's details or anyone's personal details. These are the customer details, used only for one real purpose. Obviously, we need to know who's using what license. And should any machines break, we do get catastrophic errors, not within the GoConnect software, but hardware failures or operating system failures, which means that GoConnect site might go down, and we might lose reference as to what serial number a particular customer is using. Then the only option we really have is to be able to search our database by customer name. If you've not put the correct customer name details on this page, then indeed we may well have problems finding that license again, and we're taking longer to fix the problem than we would initially have hoped. So please be aware that we don't use these address details, any contact details for any sales or marketing purposes. They won't get any follow-up calls or cold calls from the GoConnect team or Montago team to that customer saying, thank you for purchasing GoConnect Panasonic. Would you like to participate in a questionnaire, or can you tell us how you found the service, or maybe we can interest you in some more products. None of that will happen. These are purely for reference, so we know which site is using which serial number, which license, and maybe search database in the future should we need to. So you've got the address details here. If you don't fill them in, all the boxes in with enough information, then it won't allow you to proceed with the licensing page, but it'll give you the relevant messages should you miss anything off. Once you've put the contact details in here, you get 2 or 3 options depending on what's relevant for the site. The main option, once you put the 8-digit or 8-character serial number in, is the register online. That's the more obvious choice to go through. You register online, it connects to a licensing server, and then brings back the information for licenses relevant to that serial number. If the machine has limited network or internet connectivities, maybe it's behind a firewall, security purposes mean that we can't get onto the internet, then there's always the manual registration option. What this means is that someone has to go onto a register page, whether it's a member of the GoConnect site support team, or maybe a reseller from another machine, can actually then register it online from another machine, which will create a series of 16-character unlock codes that are a bit long and unwieldy. But you click on the manual registration page option here, and put those digits in, and that would then license up the screen the site, even if they don't have the internet access. Don't worry if you've not done that before. We can talk you through the process. It's really quite simple, and once you've done it at least once or twice, then you'll understand how it actually works. As I'm sure, I hope that most of you are aware, there is always a 30-day trial available with our software. We're quite happy for anyone to download our software from the GoConnect website, install it on your own computers or a customer's machine, put the contact information on this screen, leave the serial number box blank, leave it empty, and click on the register for a trial button, which you should be able to see is grayed out at this point here, and that will give that computer or that site a 30-day free trial. Now, unlike some software, you won't see that the GoConnect software has limited functionality based upon that trial. It won't be that you go to certain options on the GoConnect server or GoConnect client and it says, I'm sorry, this option is not available to you, please purchase a full license. You don't get any of that. It's simply a time-limited trial that lasts for 30 days. It has a combination of the full CRM or indeed the new Office licenses, formerly known as the Express licenses, and a series of other licenses, maybe even a couple of mobile licenses in there and attendant licenses, so that the customer can use our software. They can connect up to their Panasonic if they've already got one, and get to understand and test our software before saying yes to buying it. We're hoping that 30 days is enough for someone to use our software to realise how powerful and useful it is, and obviously go back to the reseller and say, yes please, we'd like to purchase that product. So we do have a 30-day trial. Once you've licensed it up, you'll see a list of licenses that are actually relevant to that site on that screen below, and you'll see that in a few minutes on my own machine. So then you click on Next, and you get the, well, I've actually gone through this already. Right, next you go onto the site page. The site page is very simple. It's just a brief bit of information about where that PBX actually is. So you give it a unique name. It could be that if you're using multi-site or the Go site license, that you would want to have, you have two sites set up, one say Manchester and one Liverpool, whatever is appropriate for your customer. So you give them a unique identity in there, and then use the correct language, country and area code information. That area code information there is relevant for the dialing rules, so we know where we're dialing from, which helps dialing out work correctly. You will see that there's a tick box at the bottom here for using the Windows dialing rules, using the TAPI configuration. Now, we would say that you only need to put that tick box in there, or check that box, if you know it's appropriate to the site. If the phone and modems options have not been configured on this Go Connect server for dialing out properly, and this is designed primarily for countries such as the United States, where their dialing rules are quite different and individual compared to those in the UK. If you put a tick box in there and phone and modems has not been configured for dialing rules, then I'm afraid you will find problems dialing out. And then we have to ask you, we'll ask you very simply to take the tick box out and then stop and start the connection to the PBX. So we have had that quite a bit recently. People are checking that box without really realising what the consequences are or what it indeed is used for, and that's caused them problems. So I'll just bring that to your attention at this point. Once you've got a site set up, the last stage really is to connect to the phone system. So this is an example of connecting to the KX series. There's a drop down at the top which gives you the option of which phone system type you are connecting to. You've got the two options at the moment, the KX series or the new NS1000. You will always also see a demonstration PBX in that drop down. That means that for customers who haven't already bought a Panasonic phone system from yourselves, the reseller, that you can connect it up and have a pretend connection to a phone system so they can see the functionality without actually making any live telephone calls. We can fake telephone calls going through the system, and we'll be doing similar along the lines of that later on today, and indeed tomorrow for those of you that are going to be joining in with the client-side configuration webinar. So you have to pick the right phone system type. The next top box at the bottom, tick box, is for the MUX. So as I'm hoping most of you are aware, we're using the KX series. If you have more than one CTI application like Go Connect connection to the Panasonic KX, then it only allows one connection at a time. If you have more than one application, then you have to install and license up the Panasonic multiplexer or MUX software on a machine. Can be the same machine that we are installing the Go Connect server on, or it can be another machine on the network. We don't have any real preferences over where it's installed, as long as it's installed and configured correctly. The next option down there is the IP address. Now, if you're connecting directly to the Panasonic phone system without the multiplexer software in place, then you put the IP address of the phone system in. Hopefully it's available over the network. If you're connecting to the MUX, because other applications are connecting to the Panasonic, then this IP address here is the IP address of the computer, the PC that's got the multiplexer software installed on it. Nothing too complicated there. If you have any problems with that, then there's always a member of the Go Connect support team at Mondigo that can help you just figure out what the correct, which is the appropriate IP address to use. Below that, you have some you have the fast call devices. Now, these are used by the Go Connect mobile client. Allows fast dial. It speeds up the process of using the dial-through options. So whichever phone devices you have set up for this fast dial, we put the details into this page here to allow the dial-through to work quicker from the mobile client with no lengthy pauses whilst it's going through, waiting for a dial tone, then dialing the internal extensions or the external number that you're trying to dial through. But now the next options down here are the Auto Create and Force Now buttons. Auto Create tick box, what that means is that the GoConnect software will automatically try and download a list of all the pre-configured phone system, devices, extensions from the Panasonic phone system, along with their names. And then keep yourself up to date. So once every 24 hours, it will then reconnect or to recheck against the Panasonic phone system to see if any new devices have been configured or if any names have changed against those devices, those extensions. So that's, like I said, once every 24 hours, once the configuration is being set up. And you've always got there a Force Now button if you haven't got time to wait 24 hours for any changes you've made in the Panasonic to take effect in the GoConnect software. So Force Now will force it to go back to the Panasonic phone system and refresh the extensions list based on any changes that you've made. And the last option on the bottom here is the trunk access. Now, trunk access, as I'm sure most of you know, is the options that we use, the number that we use to get an outside line from a customer's point of view. Normally, in the UK, it's a 9. So if you're using the physical handset, you dial a 9, and then the number to get an external telephone line over the trunks for that site. You put that option here onto the GoConnect server software, and it means that the actual our GoConnect software does that for you automatically, so we don't need to have that 9 held in place in the database that we're connecting to for integration purposes. So that's that page there. Once you click on Save, it will then try and connect to the Panasonic phone system. What you should see in that log box down towards the bottom is a series of messages just telling you the process of how well it's doing with its connection. Obviously, it should say connected, then it will say downloading extensions, and then monitoring extensions. If you see any error messages in there on the lines of unable to connect, already connected, or something along those lines, then you need to maybe check the details are correctly configured properly. Once you've done that, you'll click the next button, and you get a very simple screen, which is a list of all the extensions it was able to download. You can make changes to the extension details on here, maybe change the name associated with an extension, that kind of thing. It's really just, at this point, it's just a tool to show that we have definitely connected to the Panasonic and downloaded extensions. The important piece of information you want to keep an eye on in this page is the state column. Hopefully, against all the extensions that you've downloaded, and especially the ones that you want to use from a customer's point of view, you'll see the states either flicking between on hook and off hook, showing that they're actually being used, or maybe even ringing or ring back, depending on what state they're actually currently in. If they stay offline or unknown, then we've probably got some problems. Maybe the phone, the extensions aren't, or the handsets aren't actually fully configured on the network yet, so therefore we're aware they existed, we just can't actually monitor them. If you don't see any information in here at all, then we would suggest that you click on the back button, double check all the details that you've entered in there for connection to the Panasonic, and check that log box that we talked about earlier on to see if there's any messages in there that may indicate to you why we weren't able to connect. If you can't understand or fathom yourself why we didn't get a nice downloaded list of extensions, then please contact the GoConnect support team at Mondigo, and we'll do what we can to help identify where the problems lie and help you get that site set up correctly. Once you do that, so it's all gone through correctly, there's a close button. You do that, and in essence, the site or the server side of the site is then configured. So just those 3 main pages to go through. Nothing too complicated. We can help you should you have any problems with that, especially the first time. And that's that done. So now we're going to go through all the other options that are available through the classic menu, which allows you to either go back and change some of those details if the customer's details have changed, or indeed change some additional configuration options for the GoConnect server. So in order to help with that, I'm now going to move from the slides to my own version of GoConnect server. Hopefully this will come up here. I'm going to very briefly go through the installation wizard again. So maybe because you've got a bigger screen, you can see details in slightly more clear, so you can actually see what I'm going through. So I'm hoping you can see my mouse moving around. I'm now going to go to the installation wizard. Because I've actually already had this installed on my machine once before, I've already put some address details in here. Obviously, you can see I'm going against my own rules. I'm just putting in test and test and test through all these pages. That's just because this is internal. I don't mind doing that for myself, but I would please repeat that from a real live site, from a customer's point of view, you put their correct details in there and not your own. I'm now going to go to my text file here, get the license I've given myself. I'm going to put this into the serial number here. You'll see that there's a register online option. Now that I've put the details in, there's come alive. Click on that. It says, are you sure these are the correct details? Well, I know they're not, but in this case it's just a demo for this purpose of this presentation, so click on OK. It's now contacting our server, licensing server here. And now we can see that because we're licensed up properly, we have all this additional information. So we can see that this particular license has 10 Office or what formerly known as Express licenses, 5 CRM licenses, 2 attendant. Scroll down here, we've got a couple of mobile clients as well, and Active Directory and calendar integration. So that's all nicely set up. So once you see that correct information in there, we know that we've got the license is correctly in place, so we can now move on to the next step. I forgot to say when going through the slides, there is this licensing assistance option here, which downloads a quick PDF which explains how the licensing actually works, maybe answers any questions that you have about it. Now that this site is licensed, I can click on Next and go to the site. So as I explained, I'm going to give it a nice unique identifier. I have very little imagination, so I'm going to just call it Demo because that's all this is. I'm not connecting up to a live Panasonic at the moment, which is going to keep it completely restricted to this one laptop we're using. So we've got a language setting. Obviously I'm going to use, well not obviously, but I'm going to choose English because that's my native tongue. The country I'm in is United Kingdom, and I'm not in Aberdeen, I'm in Peterborough. Now I don't know why I always do this. I'm only running a demonstration. It doesn't really matter what the area code is, but this is just my habit. I've been using this for several years now, so I always put our correct code in. I'm not going to select this option for use the Windows settings or dining rules because I haven't got them configured on this machine. I'm going to click on Next. Now I can show you the options here just a bit more clearly. If I was going to be connecting to one of the KX series phone systems, I would put in, or I wouldn't select to a MUX. We haven't got the MUX installed or configured on our site at the moment. I would put the IP address in of the Panasonic KX, put the fast devices in here, and then I have a trunk access of a 9. Now for today's presentation purposes, I'm actually going to be connecting to the demonstration PBX that I spoke about earlier on. This demonstration PBX is quite simple. It's a fake PBX. It doesn't actually exist. It's all programmed into the GoConnect server software. It allows you to fake calls going from a client, maybe get internal calls coming into the GoConnect client, or make fake calls going out from the client so that you can demonstrate to the customer how it would look and feel should they actually install it and have it configured with their own Panasonic phone system. Just for the purpose of today, I'm also going to take this box here for call generator. Now for those of you that want to use this demonstration option, that call generator tick box, what that means is that whilst this GoConnect server is running, it's going to be faking calls going in and out from various extensions that are configured on it. So it would demonstrate a live site with calls going through that we don't have complete control of but are actually happening, and that's quite useful later on for this demonstration to show you what the live calls going through the server software actually look like. I'm going to have that tick box there. Click on Save. You can see here the log box I talked about earlier on has this nice bits of information here that show that we've got a good connection. The main one being here that I've just highlighted, being the connected event. And it says here that we're monitoring 201, 202, 203, etc. So that's all a good sign. Monitoring is good. There's no error messages in there. So it's all nicely connected up to the phone system. Click on Next, and you'll see a list of 4 extensions that have been supposedly downloaded from the Panasonic phone system. These are the ones that are built into the demo PBX. I could have wanted to change Ian Deacon here, which is the extension I'm going to be using later on. Click on Edit. It's downloaded that name from the phone system. If that's not appropriate, maybe it's just using short name abbreviations, and actually in real life it's not Ian. He was the old user of that extension, you just haven't got around to changing it on the phone system yet. I'm going to change it to Ben Voller, that's myself. Click on Save, you'll see that's changed there. Now that hasn't forced a change to the Panasonic phone system. This is purely from a GoConnect software point of view. It changed the visual name that gets associated with a particular device. You may have seen some other options when I clicked on Edit there. We'll talk about this in a minute when we go to the classic menu to show you what options you can apply to the the different extensions as we go through them. So now that I've done that, I click on close, and from a server point of view, that's the configuration finished. That's a standard installation. It took me less than 5 minutes to do that, and that's most of the time it's taken me actually talking through what I was doing. So on a live site, that should be really quite simple. I think you'll find that the most lengthy part of the install of the installation and configuration of the server is actually when we install the SQL Server Express Edition. We don't have any control over how long that takes, but every time Microsoft introduces a new version of the SQL Server software, it seems to take that much longer to install. Unfortunately, we do have to have it in place on a site for our software to work properly. It's what actually holds things like the call history and the shared address book. So that's that done, nice and simple, no nasty surprises there. But in some cases, you may want to go through and make some more changes to the site. Maybe there's some additional configuration you want to go through. So you can always go back to the GoConnect server and make adjustments as appropriate. So obviously you could go through the wizard again if it's only the licensing details you wanted to change, or maybe a name against extension. But we would suggest that you actually go to the classic menu, because this gives you the ability to pick and choose what settings you actually are working with. Now, there's no particular preference in which order I talk about these things. So for ease of this presentation, and so that it goes along with the pages, the slides that I've got configured on the PowerPoint presentation in the background, I'm now going to briefly start at the top under Activity, work my way down through these options on the left-hand side, and just briefly explain to you what these options are used for from a live site point of view. Nothing too complicated. So I'm going to start off with calls. So the activity option here is literally just to give you some live feedback on what's actually going through the phone system. You can see here that whilst I've been talking, a call has been fired up for extension or device 101, which is actually an agent. It shows that they have called this, I'm not very good with my country codes with a 49. There, so let me just expand that to full screen. You may get a better representation. Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily use this page. It's normally used by us for diagnostic purposes, but it does give you a clear indication that the phone system's working and that we are tracking the calls going through. So we have various columns here. We have the devices that are involved. This is 204 for Libby. She's calling this Bedford number. It's an outgoing call, as you can see down the right-hand side. It's got a duration column and it says connected. So that's all nice and neat and tidy. So you can't, when you configure this page, it just gives you a nice clear indication of what's actually going on. If you know that the phone system is working, people are making calls, and yet we're not seeing anything go through here, then something's not quite right. You might need to readdress your configuration options. Okay, so that's a real-time representation on the calls going through the Panasonic phone system. We have a sessions option here. Now, this is nothing too complicated either. This is just a list of all of the clients, or indeed any other services that are connecting to the GoConnect server. You can see two here. These two should always be here. You've got UC telephony. That's the connection to, that's the session for the connecting to the phone system. And we have one for the GoConnect configuration. That essentially means that GoConnect is talking to itself. It doesn't mean it's got a little bit loopy. That's what it has to do. So as you see more and more customers or users log in, and I'll just log in to GoConnect here. If I fire up my client, assuming I've got it pointing in the direction, which I might need to change. It's gone grey. It's gone green again, but I think this is actually pointing to our live. Yeah. I was going to change this information in here. Nothing too complicated. Click on Save. We'll talk about those options tomorrow. Now, because I had the wrong IP, the wrong extension details, it's crashed out. I would say at this point that sometimes you make changes such as the IP address of the GoConnect server that you're connecting to on the client software, that you might want to just close down GoConnect and start it up again. Right, the reason why it's erroring out is because Ben2 doesn't exist as a user, and also extension 3857 doesn't exist on the server, so I'm just going to change those to appropriate. We'll talk about those in more detail tomorrow when we do the client configuration. But you can see now that we've got a connection up here, the call generator is faking a call going through my extension 201, but you'll see automatically that another record has appeared here called user Ben, that's me, those who didn't catch my name at the beginning. And it's called GoConnect, which is the client, and the resources are client, which means it's actually using a an Office license. If you were using CRM licenses, you would see CRM in here. So that's just a real-time screen that shows you who's connecting up to the GoConnect software, so that you can actually see who's using it at any particular point. You probably wouldn't use that yourself, but it's quite useful for someone like me to actually maybe get some clarity on what's going on from a technical support point of view. So that's the session screen. I should say most of these screens have a search option at the top. If I start clicking in Ben here, you'll see that the screen beneath has started, it's filtered down to only show Ben. If I delete them, it goes back to normal. Now, that call here that's going through from Bedford is actually just going to get a little bit obtrusive, so I'm now going to exit GoConnect. I don't need to demonstrate that anymore. As I exit GoConnect, you can see that my session was automatically closed down as well. That's all very nice. So, under Enterprise, it could be that you want to change or maybe just check some details against your licensing or the customer's licensing details. Maybe you've, after having licensed up the site and got everything installed, they've purchased some additional licenses. Once you get the information or the email confirmation email back from the from Panasonic saying your license has been updated, you'll probably get an additional message saying please go to the GoConnect server and refresh the licenses. The Refresh Licenses button is down here. What that means is that if we made amendments against that serial number for your licensing, maybe added 5 more CRM licenses or whatever is appropriate for the site, we would say click on Refresh Licenses, click that button, it goes back to the GoConnect server and then draws down any fresh information to this licensing. Nothing too complicated here. If you ever want to know how many licenses have been applied against a particular serial number or want to question some details, then come to the screen and you can always just check the details here. That's nice. You can also see here, now that I put it in full screen mode, there's a used column. So as I was firing up a client, if I just do that again very quickly, fire up, go get a client. If I could spell, that would be useful. If I now go back to my licensing screen here, can we see that against the Office license, as I said earlier on, I'm using an Office license, so used has gone up to 1. Nice and simple, so you know how many of which license are being used on this site as well. So that's licensing screen, nothing too complicated. Client security, for those of you that have used GoConnect in the past, this is new to 2.4. What this allows you to do is, by default, the GoConnect client uses Windows authentication to connect to the GoConnect server and creates a corresponding username on the screen. We're about to look at that in a minute, called the user screen. That doesn't draw down any additional information from the Windows authentication, but it will create a name, in my case Ben, for a user, and allow that client, that GoConnect client, to connect to the GoConnect server. We also have an option on there for do not log in, so it allows the user to stay anonymous, so we don't create a user account. All they're going to be doing is using the call control against the particular device extension handset they're trying to use. Now, those have always been in place, those connection or credential options, but recently it's been decided that maybe some particular sites may want to keep control over how users connect. Now, it could be that they want to, that maybe they've got a very large workforce, and rather than just allowing anyone that has a GoConnect software possibly installed on their machine to connect, they want to pick and choose who can do it. So in those cases, they would go to the user screen, which I'm about to look at in a minute, and manually create users and assign them passwords and then give them out as appropriate to their end users. This is additional, not additional security, it's always been in place, but maybe they want to enforce this rule using this screen here. This screen, in essence, and I've waffled a little bit, talked a bit too much about this screen. What this means is that depending on the tick boxes that are on here, you will prevent the ability for people to log in using Windows authentication or log in anonymously. By default, it allows anyone on the LAN, on the network, to connect using these options, but you can take the ticks out to turn them off, like this. And by default, for internet connections, so people in the satellite offices, remote users, people not working from the actual main office that the GoConnect server is installed on, they aren't able to connect using Windows authentication or the anonymous login. So it have to be given specific username passwords by the administrator. But obviously, you can put the ticks back in to allow them if you want to. So if you have any questions about that, then please let us know on a per site basis, but it shouldn't be too complicated. It just means that if the customer wants to, they can switch off the ability to automatically create a user based on the Windows authentication, or allow people to log on anonymously. Users section, nothing too complicated here. Most of you that already use GoConnect probably looked at this at some point. This is the area where we can control the user's configuration. We can see here there's a user called Ben. That was created automatically on the GoConnect software when I fired up my client for the first time. I know you didn't see that, didn't have this screen in front of me open up at the time, but essentially it's taken my username from the Windows network, which is Ben, and created a corresponding user account. Now we can, on this screen, we can disable, we can delete, or we can edit, or even manually add additional users. If I click on edit, I'll talk about the various options that are available here. When a user is created automatically from Windows, then it doesn't assign a password to that user. The password doesn't exist. It may have a simple one character in here, but there isn't actually a password against it. I can, if I so choose, assign any passwords that I want to that user, or indeed if I'm creating one from scratch, assign the relevant password to it. You can assign it an email address. This is very important if you're looking to do the Microsoft Exchange calendar integration, which we'll talk about later on. So put an email address in here. You've got various options down towards the bottom. You have a security policy here, user default or administrators. We'll talk about this in a minute, but each user can have one security policy assigned to them, but you can control completely what policy that actually gives them in terms of functionality from a client point of view. You can type in you can have departments here, so in my case I'm part of support team, so put support in here. Active Directory where applicable. If you've configured the Active Directory integration, which I'll discuss later, you can set the individual users either to fetch or push their settings out, send their data back to the Active Directory installation on that site. Hide status removes them from the presence window. Calendar integration, that's to allow them to update their availability on presence based on the Microsoft Exchange calendar, which we'll talk about later on. We have keep calls private. If you have a managing director, a company president or executive, whatever, that likes to use GoConnect but doesn't want everyone else using GoConnect to see who they're actually talking to on the telephone, then they can keep their call details private by selecting this option here. So maybe they don't want to see that they want a telephone call to their wife most of the day, or maybe they're spending a lot of time talking to the company solicitors. When people talking to the solicitors or attorneys, that's a little bit scary for the staff, so they probably wouldn't want the staff seeing those calls going through. We can also disable an account. So that's nothing too complicated there. New to 2.4, we have various options here. We can, in essence, hard code which devices, which extensions a particular user is set up to use. So in this case, I'm extension 201 for my desk phone. My soft phone is maybe 301, for example, even though it doesn't exist, and my mobile extension is 401. This is quite important when we get to talk about the mobile client, that if you configure the user in this way, then when you set up the mobile client, it knows which extensions it's going to be working with. And also from a GoConnect client point of view, the normal PC client, it automatically knows which extension they're going to be using as well, and builds that into the client configuration options. So that's this page here. I can save that. Everything's nice and good. As you can see, I'll go back to here. It's downloaded the name of Ben. I can change it here to Ben Voller. That's my display name for the presence window and messaging and everything else. Now, if I had Active Directory integration configured, working, and set this to send data, if I save that option, my display name here has changed. I should say here that the short name is actually like the user name that you're logging on with, changed to Ben Voller. What that would have done is that would have pushed the name Ben Voller back to the Active Directory account and changed my display name in Active Directory as well. That's useful to know. People might get a bit confused when looking at Active Directory in the first instance, and that's what that does. That's how that's designed to work. So that's users. Security policies, we briefly touched upon this earlier on. You can have as many security policies as you want. Each user that you have on GoConnect can have only one security policy assigned to them, and as standard it's going to be the default policy. We have two inbuilt policies that come pre-configured for the GoConnect server. They are both absolutely identical, and that means that everything that you might want to have switched on from a client point of view is switched on, if that makes any sense without repeating myself. If I click on Edit for the detail options here, you can see various tick boxes with various bits of functionality. Now, we can create as many policies as we want. So maybe it could be quite a simple site so that everyone uses the same policy, which is the default one, or maybe no one can use messaging. It could be that you want to get it down to maybe each department has its own set of its own policy to define the functionality that the customer's got. Or maybe it could be that it's a really complicated site and each user has their own policy. That's completely up to you and the end user what they configure for their own site, or what you configure for them on their site. So the kind of things that we would use the policies for is maybe switching off the messaging functionality for a GoConnect client, so people can't talk about the football match the night before, or TV, or whatever it is they've been doing outside of work. Or maybe the call history options aren't applicable for that particular department or user, so you can switch them off. When you make a change to this policy, anyone that's using that policy, that change will automatically be applied to them straight away. They don't need to restart their client for those rules to take effect. A couple of the key points here: edit own details. If you have a site where end users have a tendency to fiddle, to play around with the GoConnect client settings and break things, and then there's a lot of work gets put back onto the support team to then fix it, make those changes back to what they should be, then edit own details option means that they can no longer configure their own options from the GoConnect client. We have things like ability to turn off the GoConnect client can set DND, so do not disturb, or call forwarding for their extension. Maybe if it's a sales team, people are misusing that and you don't want them to be able to do it, so you would take that checkbox or take that tick out there. View other people's appointments, that means they can't see all the details in the present screen to do with their calendar appointments. So there are lots of options in here. We haven't really got time to go through them all. They are explained in more detail. Every single option here on the PowerPoint presentation is going to be available from the 2.4 launch site. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm actually going to cancel this so I don't save those details. But you can basically configure the policies as appropriate to the customer's site. So that's security policies. Now, equipment, nothing too complicated here. If you have a site set up and something changes, such as maybe the network changes mean that the IP address of the Panasonic phone system have changed, you can always come back to this screen and start reconfiguring things as appropriate. So let's start at the top. It may not be obvious to those of you that haven't used GoConnect a lot, that when you click on the name of the site, you can change the local area details here. So maybe a site just completely moves from one town to another. Maybe I've moved from Peterborough to Leicester. So you need to change the area code here to Leicester, so you can always make those changes. Click on Save. One thing I would say is that when you make any changes to this page, or indeed this page here, once you've saved that change, it only takes effect when you stop and start the connection to the phone system. So that's done through this option up here. So you can see a stop button. Click on stop. The status goes to disconnected. You should then go back to start in a minute, but I think maybe my demonstration is playing up. One thing I would say at this point, having seen something not quite work as I expected, this is a development laptop. We have various versions of software running on this. We have a pre-release version on here, not very neat and tidy. There are chances things to go wrong. You won't see these things go wrong on your own site. This is just related to my laptop. I have the ability to break things quite easily, as well as fixing things. But if anyone from the GoConnect support team at Mondago says, can you stop and start the connection to the phone system, you would use this button up here. So we've got a stop button. Hopefully what should actually happen is when you stop your connection to the phone system, it will change to a nice green start button. And then obviously you can start the service again or start the connection again. That would be used to make any changes that you've made take effect. So maybe if I flick to, no. Okay, so basically you can see here the devices, the extensions have all gone offline. That's because we're not actually connecting to the phone system at the moment. Therefore, we're not able to monitor and know their correct status. If I got my connection running again, then they would go back to on hook and off hook as appropriate. In fact, just to do a bit of technical support, I'm just going to fix this now. If I go to services, Those of you that have seen either myself or my team work on systems in the past, you might often see us going here. I'm just going to very quickly get this server started again. So I talked about the services that are created. We can see here we have a GoConnect service we discussed, set to automatically starts when the computer starts, and we have a Go telephony service called Demo. That's my connection to the Demo PBX. It's currently stopped, so I'm going to click on Start here. That is the equivalent of starting things on this page, so it's now gone back to connected. We can see here the extensions came online again, they came on hook. Now we can make changes here. We'd already seen me change the display name against extension 201, but you can also make changes, and these are explained in more detail on the presentation. You can assign similar departments to an extension as well as a user. We have do not monitor for extensions such as fax machines, maybe an extension in a spare room that we're not actually going to be using, but we just need to keep reference for it later on. Use name from telephone system means that it will always keep the display name up to date based upon what's being configured on the Panasonic. Keep call details private. That's similar to doing it against the user, but particularly to their settings, to their extension, so they can't see who this device is on telephone call to, which is all explained in more detail in the presentation. But you can play around with the configuration options in here. As a rule, not often used, but you may need to make some small amendments on here to make it work correctly for a site. Now, agents here we downloaded. This is actually from the demonstration. You probably won't see agents for the Panasonic because they're not really relevant. Trunks, if we download trunk information, here we can see we've got 2 trunks, which implies a BRI circuit or a two-line ISDN. Now, this is quite important that for busy sites where calls are being transferred from one user to another or one extension to another, in order to keep track of the CLI as it goes through from one, or the call ID from one person to another, monitoring the trunks is important so we can actually pass that information across to the new user so that each GoConnect client can accurately depict who the user is on the call to. So that's quite useful there. But I wouldn't worry too much about the name, just the fact that we are on hook. What's more importantly from a naming point of view is maybe the ring groups. So if you have ring groups set up, call hunt groups set up for a particular site, and the end user needs to know which group is being called. So for example, if you have a customer that is a call center for different companies, we know that happens quite a bit nowadays, so they can sell their services to various industries or various customers, and when they answer to the incoming call, they want to know on whose behalf they are answering the telephone call to, if that makes any sense. So for example, let's say you have a call center that is taking telephone calls on behalf of 2 different ticket booking companies. So if you have Tickets R Us as one company and buyatickethere.com is the other company, when a customer calls in, there'll be separate DDIs, separate numbers that they would dial. So they would only think they're calling Tickets R Us. When they call in, they're calling into a certain call group, which is then answered by the sales team. Now, if you assign a nice name to that call group within the GoConnect software, so maybe edit it here and call it Tickets R Us. If I could type, that'd be better. If I did that and then save it, as a call comes into that particular call group and it hits the sales team's GoConnect the extension, and therefore GoConnect is displaying the information on the call as it's coming in, the end user will know that they're answering the call on behalf of Tickets R Us as opposed to buyticketshere.com. So that's how that works. It's alpha tagging, which means that as calls come in, when the end user using GoConnect can see which people they were trying to get hold of, which group or which department they're trying to get hold of when they answer the telephone call. A more simplistic example internally is that I'm part of the support team at GoConnect on the go over here, but I'm also part of the installations team. So we have 2 different call groups set up. Before I even answer the telephone call, when a call comes into my extension, GoConnect is already telling me that someone's trying to contact the support team as opposed to the installations team. So I've already, before I answer the telephone call, I know what kind of call I'm dealing with. hopefully it's not a fresh support talk call, it's an installation that's been booked in, but that's how I know before you're on the telephone what's going through. So that's what the call groups are used for. We have an option here, voice recording. I don't know if any of you have seen that before. It's important to this voice recording integration. So it's important to understand that the GoConnect software does not do voice recording on its own. It's not a voice recording application. We don't get any hardware installed for voice recording or software, but we can integrate with it. Integrate with well, in particular one voice recorder called the Sense Recorder by Retail. What this means is that we tie ourselves into the Retail, or we are integrating with the Retail Sense Recorder phone system, which means that from a PCI compliance point of view, we can mute the calls at certain key points. We'll discuss that in slightly more detail tomorrow and a little bit later on as well. So one thing to say is we don't do the voice recording. We said that, and we wouldn't expect the reseller or the engineer to configure these screens themselves. If you have a voice recording integration that needs to be carried out from a customer's point of view, then a member of the support team, quite possibly myself, would get involved. There'd be a small charge here to purchase the right licensing, and we would help configure that site for PCI compliance. So basically call pausing at key points during a telephone call. So don't worry too much about the options that are on this screen. We'll do that for you. But if the customer sees it on their software and asks you what it's there for, you now know that it's to do with our PCI integration. So that's the voice recording. Should a site have more than one phone system, maybe they've got more than one office they want to connect up to, or maybe they've got a particularly big office and they have more than one phone system in place, and you've purchased the Go Site license, then you can click on New Site here, which allows you to then set up connection to another PBX. Nothing too complicated here. Goes through the same screens as we looked at earlier on through the wizard, or the say connection screens, as she brings you up with a fresh screen like this and like this, so that you can configure up the connection to a second PBX. So nothing too complicated there. From a support point of view, I would always recommend that the device numbers, such as extensions and trunks, are kept individual, especially the extensions. So in this case, my range of extensions are in the 200 series. If you've got another PBX you're connecting to, maybe it's off-site, maybe it's actually in another physical building, maybe it's a satellite office with their own phone system, then we would recommend that that second site maybe has a different extension range, like maybe in the 300 series. That way our software knows which particular extensions it's dealing with, and there's no ambiguity which causes us problems. So that's Go Site. Don't need to go into that in too much detail, just explaining that that's how you add it and configure it. So that's the equipment site. Let me just minimize some of this here. Equipment, that's the connection to the phone system. Now, shouldn't take too long now. We should go through a few more options that are available. Now, for those of you that are already familiar with GoConnect server and the software in general, you'll notice that this is new. So you're already familiar with the software. You'll see that we've now got Active Directory and calendar integrations options here. This is new to 2.4. So it's not really appropriate that I go through the big sales talk about this new functionality, but we will briefly explain what this is all about. So let's start at the top, Active Directory. In essence, we can link the GoConnect server into Active Directory. That means that once fully configured, just need the name of the Active Directory server with the administrator's username and password as appropriate. We can draw down or download a list of all the users from Active Directory. We'd already seen there was a user account called Ben on the GoConnect server. If I linked into our Active Directory over here at Mondigo, then I download the names for everyone else as well. And also, most appropriately, we'd also download all the extension details that are configured in Active Directory, so that we already know which user is using which extension, which makes the installation of the client much easier. Now, once that's been downloaded and configured, then we have, as we showed you on the client, and I'll go back to that in a minute, we have three phases or three options available on a per user basis. If I just edit this, we have Active Directory drop down here. So we have no integration. Maybe this one of the users that we've actually downloaded is just a fake user or a testing or spare user account, and you don't really want to have it syncing, tying in and integrating properly with Active Directory. So we can set that for no integration. We have option here to fetch data from Active Directory. That means that any changes you make to the Active Directory user account, such as their extension details, get pulled down from GoConnect and updated appropriately on the GoConnect server, or we can send data to Active Directory, which means that any data that's changed on the GoConnect server is pushed back to the Active Directory installation. Now, we would recommend that on a site that you've got this configured, that all users are configured in the same way. So maybe all users are configured to send data to Active Directory, or all users are configured to fetch data from Active Directory. It's quite simple. In order to apply that setting to everyone, if I just highlight all these users here, click on Edit, then you'll see that most of the information is now kind of blanked out and not really applicable, but any changes that we made will be assigned to everyone. So if I go Send Data, click on Edit, save that, all my users, so whether it's Ben, that just disappeared in the background, Ben has now got Send, so is the system account that's always in place is now set to Send, and the same for Test. So that means we can apply the same rule to everybody. Now, the idea is that you have one primary source of data. Whether it's the GoConnect server that you update the usernames and extensions on, or Active Directory is appropriate for that particular site, whichever one they feel more comfortable with, but they can then go ahead and just use one source of data. So maybe they've already used Active Directory a lot, they've got all the extensions configured on it, you're going to download all those users from Active Directory and then continue from an end user's point of view to make these modifications to Active Directory. Maybe they don't want to get involved from their GoConnect side, they're more comfortable with Active Directory is what they've always used in the past, so we can leave it with them to use Active Directory, and then periodically GoConnect will just update its own data based on those changes, which is quite nice. Or maybe they are they've never really set up the extensions, but they want to start using extensions more in Active Directory, but they're more comfortable using GoConnect. This is the new toy, this is the new software they're going to be playing with. So once they've downloaded all those users, they update GoConnect appropriately with extension details, and that information then gets pushed back to Active Directory. So just bear in mind that everyone should really have the same settings so that you have a uniform way of working. That's Active Directory. Calendar integration, this is nice and neat. There is instructions on the technical webinar, technical presentation on how to configure this properly. You have to apply a management role to a particular user in the Microsoft Exchange software using the management shell to get this to work properly. This isn't really a technical webinar along at that depth. This is more to do with what these options are talking about. So like I said, you download or get copies of the presentation and you'll get the instructions on how to configure this properly. Once that's configured, then what this does is this keeps the availability of the users up to date based upon their Exchange or Outlook calendar. Now, historically, in order to change the availability based on the Outlook calendar, you always had to have the GoConnect client running on their PC, as well as Outlook. You had the integration set up so that GoConnect was integrating with Outlook, and in particular their calendar, which meant that as an appointment came up, it would change their status in the GoConnect presence window from available to busy, and also then produce, add some additional information along the lines of the subject of that appointment, so that other users of GoConnect can see they are busy in a meeting. At the moment, mine should say that I'm on doing this technical webinar for the GoConnect server, so that everyone else in the office knows that I'm busy and won't try and ring me. That's all well and good, but like I said, it requires both the Outlook software running and the GoConnect client running at the same time and configured and working properly, which is all well and good. But in order to add some additional functionality to the GoConnect software, we now give the customers the chance, with the correct licensing in place, and I should have said this earlier on, that the Active Directory integration also requires an additional license. Once that license is in place and it's configured, it means that the availability and the presence window is not updated based upon the GoConnect client being configured to integrate with Outlook. It's actually talking directly to the Exchange calendar. Once configured and set up, it keeps the availability up to date, but does not require that Outlook and GoConnect are running on the client's PC. It means that if I was to finish this session now, turn my computer off and walk away, Then if I left that turned off, it would still continue to update. If I was configured to work with the Microsoft Exchange calendar, it would continue to update my availability as appropriate. Maybe I'm going to be visiting lots of customers, driving around the UK, and it says that from 12 to 1 I'm on break, then from 1 till 3 I'm visiting customer in Leicester, and then at 4 o'clock I'm visiting someone else. So even though I didn't actually have my laptop running and connecting up and running as appropriately, the Exchange calendar integration would take control of my availability. One thing I would say at this point is that in order for this to work accurately, you have to have the relevant email address assigned against the user in GoConnect. Nothing too complicated there. And some additional information that you might see is quite useful is that it also takes into account the working hours for a particular individual. Now, I don't know if you've seen this in Outlook, but you can set your working hours in the Outlook options for each individual user, and then have an appropriate message come up when they are out of office. I think by default it says not at work. So I've set my working hours as being 8 till 6. Not quite accurate enough. I do actually work a slight shift pattern, but it means that when I'm not, outside those hours from 8 till 6, if you looked at the presence window for GoConnect against my user and any of my extensions, it actually then says that I'm not at work when, first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening, so it knows where I am or where I should be at least. One thing to say, and I seem to be jumping around a little bit, so I do apologise, this session is being recorded, so you can always refer back to what I'm talking about, is that with 2.4 we have introduced the concept of being more user-oriented. Historically, we dealt with a user as one entity, and then all the extensions and devices as individual entities as well. Now, what we've done now is, with the introduction of 2.4, we have said that one user can have multiple devices. So if I quickly flick back to my user here, we already saw that I configured my 3 main devices here: desk phone, soft phone, and mobile device. What this means is that as Ben's availability changes as a user, so at 6 o'clock tonight you'll say I'm not at work, all my devices that I'm configured for here will show the same information. So regardless of what my actual clients are doing, it could be I've got no clients running, it could be I'm just using my mobile client, all those clients, my extension details for any of these 3 extensions will show the same information, which is quite powerful. And what it should also mean is that regardless of which client I make a manual change to my availability, maybe I'm running the GoConnect PC client, I set myself to being out of office because I'm leaving work early, maybe, chance would be a fine thing. Maybe that would then appropriately change the status against all of my extensions and my user to reflect the same change. So that's quite powerful, that's quite new and useful in 2.4, so I thought I should bring that up at this point. Okay, so that's kind of the integration. We're going to get a bit easier from now on. Federation, I'm not sure if any of you have actually seen this before. This is an alternative to multi-site. It requires a separate license, as I'm sure that you probably guessed. And initially, at least, if you have a site that you want to federate with, then we would configure it for you to make sure that it went smoothly. Once you are more experienced with the configuration options of it, it's not too complicated, we'll be happy for you to do it. We might offer you a bit of assistance at the beginning. So what this does is, it says rather than having multi-site, where the connection to the PBX is configured from one machine, for example, this one laptop, it actually says, okay, so let's say we have 2 satellite offices, one in Leicester, one in Peterborough, but the WAN, the network connectivity between the 2 is quite poor. Let's say that we know that historically the connection between the 2 is always going down. Maybe it's not very stable. What this would historically mean is that if the satellite office in Leicester had GoConnect clients connecting up to the GoConnect server in Peterborough, as soon as that connection between the 2 buildings, 2 offices went down, that the GoConnect clients on the satellite office would then go grey, and you would lose your call control. You'd lose the ability to search the shared address book, and everything starts to go wrong. They can't do call control, they can't do click to dial. Nothing will work from a GoConnect client point of view until that connection between the 2 buildings starts to work again. And then it's automatically go back to connected, and you'll get nice green and red statuses on the GoConnect icon, which is really not very good from an end user's point of view. So Federation has means that you actually have 2 instances of the GoConnect server installed, one in each office, one Peterborough, one in Leicester, and they connect to their own PBXs. So you've got PBX in each office controlling telephones. Then what we do, set up a link between the 2 servers using this screen. You click on Add, you give it a domain, so let's say testing. Click on Add here. You'd put the external IP address of the other machine in here. Click on Save. And what they will see on their machine when they fire up the GoConnect software, I should also say you need to have a tick box here for Allow Federation. Click on Save. On their site, they should see a similar message come up on this box saying something is trying to request federation. You edit that detail and confirm it. There's an accept option in the top drop down, which you can't see from here. And that means that the 2 sites will then be talking. You'll see an additional site come up here underneath the main one with the name of the site and then in brackets remote. And that means that from a presence, from a messaging, from a call control point of view, the 2 sites look as one. Obviously, well, not obviously, but you would have to have the phone system configured to allow extension dialing from one system to another. So if you dialed 301, which is a Leicester extension, from 201, which is Peterborough, then the phone system takes care of dialing the DDI. It should have be configured to do that. I can't really get involved at that level. That's a Panasonic engineer point of view, not a GoConnect software requirement. That then means that they then stay, they can see the presence and they can send messaging as if they're one site. But it also means if a connection between the 2 sites goes down, that each site stays up and works independently, so they don't lose call control, they don't lose the preview window, they don't lose popping. So that's all well and good. I'm not going to go into too much detail now beyond that, but that's what it's there for. If you have any questions about that, then please contact us afterwards if you've got a site that you feel is appropriate to work this with, and we'll help you with that. So that's federation. Call matching. This ties into the PCI compliance, the voice recording integration I spoke about earlier on. On here, as you probably already guessed, I would do the integration, I would do the configuration for you, but this screen is used to basically link the channel from the voice recorder with the trunk from the phone system, so that we know, so the GoConnect software knows that a call that's going through one particular trunk is actually relating to a call that's going through the channel on the voice recorder, and therefore where appropriate we can pause or mute that particular telephone call. No more detail really required at this point. We would do it for you. But if the customer asks what that's all about, then that's what that's there for. Archiving, nice and simple. We have a SQL Server database which I briefly discussed earlier on. It's installed on the GoConnect server machine. This holds the call history information against each of the extensions. Now, by default, external call history is kept for 60 days. Internal calls, the call history is kept for 7 days, and any messaging that the customer will be sending between the 2 clients is also kept for 60 days. Should you wish to change that, maybe make the retention length longer, maybe 90 days or 120 days, whatever is appropriate. Change details in here, click on Save, or maybe you want to keep less data, maybe they're not that busy, and you may want to keep a couple of weeks worth of work, so just change it to 14 days as appropriate. So that's what this page is used for. Nothing too complicated there. Microsoft OCS Lync. Now this is another area here that we would be another question. This is a setup here for integrating the GoConnect software with the customer's Lync installation, Microsoft Lync. What happens is that historically the Microsoft Lync software will allow calls between internal extensions or video chat between internal extensions using the Lync client, but you cannot make external calls because you can't connect up to a phone system. Now, what we can do is there's a license you have to purchase, and we would be involved in the configuration, but we would help configure the client site so that we create a gateway that the Lync server talks to get connection to the Panasonic phone system, and therefore allow remote call control or RCC for the Lync client to make external calls and to react accordingly to incoming calls, incoming calls as well. That's quite powerful. Like I said, there is a license that you'd have to work with, and we would help with the integration, but that's what that's there for. So if a customer has a Lync already, and wants to know how we can work with it, then please contact actually the product team, who will talk you through the process of what we need to do and explain the functionality that's available and how it would then work. So that's what the Lync integration's for. So the next option here is rules. Again, you wouldn't be expected to do this yourself. You might get an email from us asking you to make a change if you're seeing some problems on site. So this is more to do with a visual representation of the numbers that are being dialed. Maybe an example, if I click on add, is that there's a least cost routing option that's coming through, and when you're looking at the Lync, or the GoConnect client, maybe you're seeing all outgoing calls are prefixed with the least cost routing, the LCR digits, which is obviously inappropriate. Doesn't mean that you're not dialing them, it just means that you don't want to really see those from a GoConnect client point of view. The call history boxes are looking a bit messy, and we can't return calls from call history, and also the integration might not work that well with applications that we've got set up on the client point of view. So what we would do is, as a rule, we would add a rule here. So in this case, the example would be caret, which is a shift 6, 1410. I'm just going with the example on this screen here. And if we leave that box blank, then it would leave that empty and therefore replace it with nothing. So let's say that on a client point of view, every time you dialed out, you would see historically from the client point of view 1410 and then the number that you were dialing, 01733 405-840. That's the support number for the GoConnect software. So you can see here in the test, this is what we were seeing on this software, and actually what you're seeing in the result is what is going to be changed, what's actually going to be seen properly. So don't be expected to understand all the different rules that you put in place. If you were seeing some strange behavior in the GoConnect software, then either myself or a member of the GoConnect support team would tell you exactly what rule to put in place. It could be you have to get the developer involved to come up with the right regular expression, but that's what that's there for. You wouldn't historically need to use it. We've only used it a handful of times, but it just gives us some options, some flexibility. If in particular we're seeing a particular Panasonic phone system work strangely, rather than asking the engineer to make some complicated changes to the phone system, we try and suppress those problems or hide the problems using these rules here. So let's just cancel that. That's what that's there for. Under deployment, we have various options here. As we are getting bigger clients, bigger customer bases that have more end users, we are looking to push out various into various settings and installations to the customer. So let's briefly talk about what's available here. The computers, every time you install a GoConnect client and connect it up to the GoConnect server, you'll see a record appearing here, which is to do with the computer that's actually got the client software installed on. It brings back various information such as the amount of hard disk space available, amount of memory being used. Now, it's not really relevant. What is relevant is the fact that we can see a computer has had our software installed on it. The point being that once a computer has got GoConnect client installed, we can, if we need to, use a deployment package which is created by myself or a member of the development team, which will allow us to upgrade the version of the client. Maybe we're rolling out a change, everyone's upgrading from 2.3 to 2.4, rather than the engineer or the internal IT support engineer for the customer having to go to each PC and then installing the new version of GoConnect individually, one at a time, which takes some time. We would look to, at the push of a button, upgrade all the clients to the new version. So to do that, we have to register that the software's been installed. Unfortunately, at this moment, from the GoConnect software, we can't do a clean install onto a computer that hasn't already had GoConnect client installed in it, but we are looking to use group policies to do that. We're writing a documentation at the moment. But if we're doing an upgrade, then we would say, make sure that all the existing PCs have got that older version installed on them and they're registered on this list here. We would give you a PKG file or a deployment package file, which you go to software packages, click on add, and you would upload it. That would then give you, will fill in all the gaps here about what version you're upgrading to, and give it a unique identifying name. Once you've uploaded it here, you save it, and it then appears on this list. So go to computers, go back to computers again. Let's say we're using that package that's actually fake to upgrade all the clients. Select the computers we wanted to upgrade, click on tasks, send software package. Actually, because it's not configured properly, can't see anything in here. But once we had a package uploaded, you'd see it in this list, you'd select it, click on OK, and actually it would then push out an upgrade of the software to the client's PCs. You'd see that the client would then close down and restart again, but in essence, from one place, one location, it then pushes out that upgrade. Like I said, we are looking to use group policies to deploy to larger sites, but that's not, we haven't quite finalized the documentation on how to do that yet. We're just finalizing some details, but that's what we can do within the Go Connect arena at the moment. So that's what software packages are used for. Also in here, we have user settings. Now, for every user that gets set up, we will have a user profile in here, which means that if you want to, you can, on an individual basis, push various changes out to a user. So let me just get my Go Connect user running again, and I'll show you kind of changes we can do from here. Okay, so it's gone green. It's actually trying to download. It's going to fail because it wasn't actually a real package, but that shouldn't matter at the moment. Right, so my profile here, I think, actually, let me think I've broken it. Let me just remove these and add it again. Okay, so I made a change. So I've got my user profile here, and I turned on a dialing rule. I turned on the method of clipboard dialing. Now let's say that now from the administrator's point of view, we wanted to turn on web page dialing as well. You can see here, this isn't a very nice screen, but it is an interface that we can make changes to. All the options that are available on the client, we can see different options here. They all correspond. So internet on is currently set to 0, it's binary. So to turn that on, I would edit this and change the value to a 1, click on OK. That's internet dialing. When I click on Save Now, if you're watching down my green icon for the Go Connect client, what you'll see is new settings have been applied, balloon come up. That means that now if I go to my configuration options, go to dialing, you will now see that the checkbox, the tick box for web page dialing has been selected. So that means you can push out settings to the client from the PC, from the server, sorry, which is quite powerful, quite useful for an engineer or administrator to do, rather than having to walk around the office and go to each PC to make a relevant change. Now, what you can also do, which is even more powerful, is if you have a particular user set up in a way that works for an entire group of users, rather than having to go to everyone, you can actually create a template based on that one setting and then push it out to everyone. So let's say that we had Ben Voller working correctly with all my dialing rules, and I now wanted to push it out to everybody else. If I click on Tasks and go to Create New Settings from User, I get the option to pick any of my existing users. So I'm going to pick Ben Voller here, and it's creating a duplicate or a copy of all my current settings. I'm going to give it a nice name, so I'm going to call it Dialing Settings or just Dialing, and then remove anything I don't want to play with. So I'm going to remove the interface settings. Let me just close that down. Remove the interface settings and events and recordings and everything else. Keep on clicking on Remove till it all disappears. All I'm left with is my dialing options here. I've configured that on my client. If I save that now, you'll see a profile that comes up. And what I can do is, if I want to, I can now either select a profile from here, edit it, click on Merge and pick Dialing, and it will push that change out. Or, even more powerful, if I went to Users, I could select a group of users, let's say System and Test, click on Tasks, Apply User Settings, again, pick my dialing rules, click on OK, and it's pushed that settings out to all of those users. So we can now see here we have a user profile for Test with the dialing rules, another one for System with the dialing rules as well. Now don't worry that we can't see all the options here. They will still exist on the client software. What it means is that you're pushing out those dining rules to everyone, so they're all configured in the same way. That's quite powerful. It's nice, and it means you can control it from what take. Just spend the time working on one user, get it set up exactly as you want. Once you've done that, create a template for all the relevant settings, and then you can push them out to everyone else in the office rather than having to go to every single PC. One thing to note at this point, which I'm going to talk about a bit more tomorrow for the client configuration, is that if you want to start pushing out integration settings, so connections to the customer's database, their CRM, their application, then you have to switch the client to terminal services mode so that that setting appears. Those particular settings appear in the user profiles. If I quickly demonstrate here, you'll see no lasting effects to the end user by doing this, by changing it to terminal services mode at the bottom. Click on Save. If I now edit the Ben Voller profile, you'll see that down towards the bottom we've now got devices. Main device being the extension that I'm working on, so I could actually change the extension from here if I wanted to. Or indeed, if I had any other settings, let's say for example an Outlook integration set up, it will kick in a second. If I edit this now, we'll see under devices we now have a CRM1 which has got my Outlook settings in it. So I could now push those similar settings out to any users. That's quite useful. If you have any questions about that from a particular user's point of view or particular site point of view, then please let us know and we'll offer you advice. But that's what those user profiles are there for. So you can push settings out to the users from the server. So that's all nice. Let's close this down now. So lastly, the last thing to talk about here is the mobile extensions, mobile handsets. Now, I don't know if any of you have already used the mobile and configured it. We're going to talk in more detail about how this is configured when we're doing the client side. More appropriate to tie it all in the client and the server configuration. But this is an example, and I thought I actually had my phone with me, but I don't. This you can see here we have a mobile extension, a mobile handset already configured here, and as you can probably guess, it's set up for Ben Voller, being myself. So what happens is, from a client point of view, when you first download the, let's see example, the Android application, first thing you do once you download it and install the Android app is you go to the configuration, it says what's your server. You put in a server IP address, click on next, and it will create assuming you've got everything set up on the network correctly, it will create a corresponding unconfigured or non-configured mobile handset device in here. Now, this complicated set of numbers you see at the beginning, here if I click on edit, the identity or the name, that is the IMEI number from my Android operating system on my mobile. It's a unique identifier, a bit like a MAC address, but it's unique to my Android client. What that does is we would expect this user here to be blank. Historically, if you've used older versions of the GoConnect server that was configuring mobile clients, you'll also see options in here for the desk phone extension and mobile extension. Now, those are no longer configured on this page. They're configured against the user, as we saw earlier on. I've already configured my desk phone and mobile extension on my user. So you only need to select a user on this page, click on Save, and then on the client mobile client, click on Refresh, because it would have said refresh the information. It's not being configured. Configure that client. Click on Refresh. It then updates and completes the configuration. So that's what this option is here for. This means that once someone has instigated the configuration of their mobile app, it will create a record in here. If it's an Android anyway, it will create a record in here. You go in, you select the correct user, click on Refresh on the Android app, and the rest of the configuration has been completed. If you're using the iPhone app, then it's slightly more complicated from an end user's point of view. Rather than provisioning it from the server, like we've just seen here, picking my user, you actually have to tell it which extension you want to work with and which username you're going to be working with. For those of you that haven't used it already, we'll probably offer you a bit of advice when you do the first installation. We're hoping it is self-explanatory, but once you download the iPhone app from iTunes, you put in the external IP address of the GoConnect server or the site, pointing to the GoConnect server. You would then put in a username and password, select your mobile extension and your desk phone extension, click on save, and it will create a record in here, but the administrator doesn't need to modify it from the server point of view. It's already come pre-configured with all the right settings. So that's the iPhone app. That's what this is used for. So if I wanted to change it now so that, maybe, let's say this is a work mobile, I have left the job, maybe I've changed department or got a new phone and given my phone to someone else. I know we haven't got many good examples set on here, but we do have a user called Test. If I selected Test now and saved it, next time I fire up my mobile client, next time the mobile client on that particular handset gets fired up, gets started up, rather than working with Ben's extensions, it works with Test's extensions. So that's quite nice. Also, if you went to the user and changed the extensions that we were working with against a user, so maybe changed now for Test, or previously changed the settings against Ben Voller, maybe I've moved offices and moved from one room to another, and therefore my desk phone has changed from 201 to 202, for example, then we can change the extension against the user, and next time the Android application is fired up, then it would use those extensions. So that's what this is used for. That's how you configure it from a server point of view. We'll probably be repeating most of that tomorrow with the client application, so that's not too bad. I have seen a question come through from someone about multiple servers. I'll try and instigate them that answer that question later on. There's a question about several CTI servers or the master server possible to integrate. I'll try and deal with that one later on. So that is, in essence, the server configuration webinar finished. At this point, if you've already muted, you can unmute yourself. If there are any other questions, anything you want me to repeat, anything you want to show you again, or just maybe clarify some points, or maybe you have a particular question from a user site that you've already configured, you want me to help you with that. As long as it's not too complicated a question, I can help now. If you think it's a complicated question, then the best way to get hold of us is, and I'll just use, it's support@goconnectcrm.com. will work. So at this point, does anyone have any questions? You could use the chat option on GoToMeeting if you have any questions, or you can just unmute your phone and ask the question at this point. If not, then if no one answers in the next couple of minutes, then we'll close this session down. I do thank everyone for taking the time to join this webinar. I know it takes quite a bit of time out of your day, but we do feel that having done these webinars, and there's a client one tomorrow, that it empowers you. It allows you to feel more confident about the GoConnect software. You can field any questions the customer may point to you or put in your direction about the configuration options on the server and the client, and you won't feel like you always have to contact Mondigo to get these questions answered. Oh, message, that's not good. So we can help you with those questions, but we're trying to make you feel more comfortable about the software. As a reseller, you could probably have it installed on your own site, so you can use it on a daily basis and get more comfortable. But we're just filling in all of the gaps here today and tomorrow, and again we're doing it again next week, I believe, for another group of people. So no questions to come through at the moment. Are there any other questions that I can answer today, or should we close the session down? And I have actually recorded the session as well, so we're assuming that the quality is good enough, we will make that recording available to those who want to actually go through the settings again. Or you can download a copy of the presentation to go with this, the PowerPoint presentation, from the 2.4 launch site for GoConnect Panasonic.
Hi, Ben.
Hi there.
It's Noel Hoskins from MPS. One simple question which I guess
Yeah.
was, I'm not sure whether you covered. As far as the mobile client, am I right in thinking you're putting the public IP address of the server?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And is simple port forwarding on the router adequate to support it?
More than adequate, yeah. It's not too complicated. Yeah. If you're using the, historically it's port 21051 for the secured connection, or 21050 for the traditional connection. They both work. You can use port forwarding. We'll talk about this a bit more tomorrow if you're going to participate in tomorrow's client one. But you can, if you want to, if you wanted to use a different port for coming in from an external IP address, you can quite happily. So, for example, if you wanted to use port 3000 to connect, as long as you pointed port 3000 to port 21050 or 21051 on the machine that's got the GoConnect server installed on, then that would work.
Yeah.
From a client configuration point of view, you would just put the IP address, then a colon, and that new port number, and it would use that port to connect instead.
Okay, good.
You can use the internal IP address, but obviously as soon as you leave the office, if you're not on the Wi-Fi, it's not going to do very much.
No, of course. Would you, is there a way you can choose between them if you're internal or external?
What do you mean, flick between the two?
Yeah, so if I'm inside the building.
With the newer version of the client, you can, there's an option on there, settings says use a new server, but we would always recommend that you go with the external IP address and it works from both environments.
Yeah.
If you've experienced slight weirdness where you can only connect from a company's Wi-Fi and as soon as you walk out and use data or someone else's Wi-Fi, it won't connect, might be down to loopback configuration, or the fact that the network address translation, the port forwarding, hasn't been configured for loopback. That did actually come up yesterday from someone. Like I said, we'll repeat most of this tomorrow, but if you have a particular site that's having problems, then feel free to contact us and we'll offer you as much advice as we can to try and get it working for you.
Okay, that's great. That answers my question. So
Brilliant.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm hoping that most of you are going to join again tomorrow for the client one. Tomorrow is slightly more interesting because it's actually making changes that the client's going to see take effect, if that makes any sense. This one's a bit dry. It's all to do with just the server configuration, which isn't a big wow factor from an end user. Tomorrow is the client one, where we can show how we can actually streamline the client configurations for all of our clients to get the most out of the software for the end user. So you'll probably get more kick out of that one. It's get more involved, and you can see how you can streamline it and make things more customized for that particular end user. Okay, so I think now I'm going to close this session down, and then hopefully I'll talk to most of you guys again tomorrow. So thank you for your time, and like I said, there will be recordings and copies of the presentations available through the website as well. Thank you very much.